thought the nightmares would stop after the first week. Everybody told me stress could do strange things to the brain, especially after losing someone close, and maybe they were right at first. Every single night I saw the same hallway. The same flickering light hanging from the ceiling. The same damp carpet that looked black under the darkness. And at the end of that hallway, there was always a red door slightly open, just enough for someone to watch me from inside. I never saw their face clearly. Only one pale eye staring through the crack, while a low scraping sound echoed through the walls like metal dragging across concrete. Every time the dream ended, I woke up gasping at exactly 3:17 in the morning with my chest hurting so badly it felt like someone had been sitting on me while I slept. At first I laughed it off. I even joked about it with my friend Marcus while we were eating at a diner near campus. He smirked and said, "Bro, stop watching horror garbage before bed." I laughed too, but deep down something about the nightmare felt wrong. Too detailed. Too consistent. Dreams usually changed. This one never did. Every single night the hallway looked identical, down to the stains on the wallpaper, and the buzzing sound coming from the ceiling light. By the sixth night I started noticing things from the dream appearing in real life. Small things. Easy to ignore if you wanted to. A water stain above my apartment door shaped exactly like the crack in the dream hallway ceiling. Scraping noises behind my bedroom wall after midnight. The smell of wet carpet in rooms that had never been flooded. I kept telling myself it was coincidence because the alternative sounded insane. Then I found the door. It happened 3 days later after a thunderstorm knocked out the power in half the city. My apartment building was old, the kind with narrow stairwells and pipes that groaned constantly like the place was alive. I was using my phone flashlight to get downstairs, when I noticed a hallway I had somehow never seen before beside the laundry room. I stopped immediately because every hair on my arms stood up at once. The wallpaper was the same faded yellow from the nightmare. The carpet looked almost black under the emergency lights. And hanging above the hall was a single flickering bulb buzzing quietly in the darkness. My body froze before my mind even processed what I was seeing. I remember whispering, "No way," under my breath while my pulse hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. The hallway should not have existed. I had lived there for almost 2 years. I knew every floor, every apartment, every storage room. Yet somehow this narrow corridor was suddenly there like it had been waiting for me to notice it. I should have walked away. Any normal person would have. Instead I slowly moved forward like something inside me already knew what waited at the end. Each step made the floor creak softly beneath my shoes. The smell of mold grew stronger the deeper I went. Then I saw it. The red door. Slightly open. Exactly like the dream. I couldn't breathe for a second. My flashlight trembled violently in my hand while my mind tried to force logic into a situation that had none. Maybe I had seen this hallway before without remembering. Maybe my brain copied it into the nightmares somehow. That explanation lasted about 5 seconds before the scraping sound started behind the door. Slow. Metallic. Deliberate. I stumbled backward instantly. The sound stopped the moment I moved. Complete silence swallowed the hallway again. Then a voice came from behind the door, barely above a whisper. "You finally came back." My entire body went numb. The voice sounded familiar, but not in a comforting way. It felt like hearing someone you buried years ago suddenly speak from another room. I backed away without answering and nearly dropped my phone trying to run. The hallway suddenly felt longer than before. The flickering light buzzed louder overhead while the scraping noise resumed behind me, closer this time, almost as if something heavy was dragging itself toward the crack beneath the door. I sprinted back toward the stairwell and slammed into the wall at the end because the exit I came through was gone. I swear to God it had vanished. There was only more hallway stretching into darkness. My breathing turned ragged while panic crushed every rational thought from my head. I turned around slowly and saw the red door fully open now. The room beyond it was dark except for a television glowing faintly in the corner. On the screen was live footage of me standing there in the hallway holding my phone. My stomach dropped so hard it physically hurt. The camera angle was impossible. It was filming me from somewhere behind my shoulder. Then a shape moved across the television screen. Tall. Thin. Human, but wrong somehow, like its limbs bent slightly out of place. I spun around expecting to see someone standing behind me, but the hallway was empty. When I looked back at the television, the figure was closer to the camera now. Watching me. Smiling. Suddenly my phone flashlight died. Darkness swallowed everything instantly except the pale glow from inside the room. I heard footsteps approaching from somewhere behind me. Slow. Wet. Dragging across the carpet. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel someone standing inches away from my back breathing softly against my neck. Then the whisper returned, closer than before. This time, Dawn, wake up. I bolted forward blindly and crashed through the doorway into the room with the television. The instant I crossed the threshold the screen went black, but the reflection remained. I could still see myself standing there, shaking violently, except the reflection moved half a second slower than I did. I stared at it in horror while the footsteps outside the room stopped completely. My reflected self lifted his head before I did. Then he smiled. Wide enough to show teeth. I whispered, "What the hell are you?" But the reflection answered before I finished speaking. You already know. The television flickered again and suddenly showed my bedroom. The camera moved through my apartment, while rain hammered against the windows outside. Every detail matched perfectly. I watched the camera drift toward my bedroom door. A second later my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Marcus calling. I answered immediately, to hear another human voice, but before I could speak he said, "Ethan, why is somebody standing behind you?" My blood turned cold. I looked at the reflection again. There was now a dark figure behind me inside the screen. I could not see it in the room itself. Only in the reflection. Marcus started breathing heavily through the phone. Dawn, turn around, he whispered. Then the call disconnected. The television image zoomed closer to the figure, until its pale face filled the entire screen, and for the first time I realized the thing smiling at me looked exactly like me. Remember leaving that room. For days afterward my memories felt broken, like somebody had taken scissors to parts of my life and cut entire moments away. 1 second I was staring at the television with my own face smiling back at me, and the next I was waking up on the floor of my apartment with sunlight burning through the blinds directly into my eyes. My head pounded so hard I thought I had a concussion. At first I convinced myself it was all a nightmare layered inside another nightmare. That explanation lasted until I looked at the clock beside my bed. 3:17, the numbers blinked softly in red, because the power had reset during the storm. My stomach tightened immediately. Morning light filled the room, but the clock still read 3:17 because it had stopped during the blackout. I sat there staring at it while a cold feeling crawled slowly into my chest. Then I noticed my bedroom door was open. I always slept with it closed. Always. The hallway outside looked darker than it should have even though sunlight poured through the apartment windows. I could hear faint scraping sounds somewhere beyond the living room. Slow. Metallic. Exactly like the nightmare. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, an aluminum desk lamp, and stepped carefully into the hallway. Hello? My own voice sounded weak. No answer came back. The apartment looked normal at first glance, but tiny details were wrong. The kitchen chairs had moved slightly from where I left them. One cabinet door stood open. Water dripped somewhere steadily even though no faucet was running. Then I saw the footprints. Wet black footprints stretched across the kitchen floor toward the bathroom. Bare human feet. Long and thin. I felt frozen in place while my brain desperately tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe somebody broke in during the storm. Maybe I sleepwalked. But deep down I already knew neither explanation was true. The footprints were too dark, almost oily, and they ended halfway down the hall like whoever made them simply vanished. I backed away slowly and nearly screamed when my phone suddenly rang in my hand. Marcus again. The second I answered he shouted, "Dude, where the hell have you been?" His voice sounded shaky, exhausted. "I came to your apartment last night." My throat tightened. "What are you talking about?" "After you called me." Or, after whatever that was called me. My pulse spiked instantly. "Marcus, I never called you." Silence filled the line for a moment. Then he said quietly, "That's impossible." I sank slowly onto the couch while sweat gathered down my neck. Marcus explained that around 3 in the morning he got a video call from me. At first the screen was black except for breathing sounds. Then the camera turned on. He said I was standing in a dark hallway staring directly into the camera, without blinking. Behind me was the red door. "You looked wrong," he whispered. "Your face. I don't know how to explain it." According to him, I kept repeating the same sentence over and over. It followed me home. Then the call abruptly ended. Marcus drove to my apartment immediately, because he thought I was having some kind of breakdown. But when he got there, my front door was slightly open. Every light inside was off. He walked through the apartment calling my name, and found nobody there. "But I heard something in your bedroom closet," he said. "Something breathing." I couldn't speak. My eyes slowly drifted toward the bedroom down the hall. The closet door was closed now, but suddenly it looked different somehow. Taller. "Marcus," I whispered carefully, "don't joke with me right now." "I am not joking." His breathing grew uneven. "I left because I heard you laughing inside the closet. Except you were also standing behind me in the hallway." My grip tightened around the phone so hard my hand hurt. "What?" "I saw you, Ethan. Standing at the end of the hall smiling at me." But the closet was still laughing too. My stomach twisted violently. "You lying." "I wish I was." Then his voice dropped almost to a whisper. "The thing in your apartment isn't you." The call ended suddenly with a loud burst of static. I immediately tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail every time. That was the moment real fear truly settled into me. Not panic. Not confusion. Fear. Deep and cold. Because part of me already believed him. I don't know how long I sat there staring at the dark hallway afterward. Eventually I forced myself to move toward the bedroom. Every instinct screamed not to open the closet door, but another part of me needed answers more than safety. My hand trembled violently as I reached for the handle. Before I touched it, someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 slow knocks. I almost collapsed from relief. Another human being. I rushed toward the entrance and opened it instantly. A police officer stood outside beside an older woman from the apartment downstairs. She looked pale and terrified. "Sir," the officer began carefully, "we received a complaint about screaming last night." My mouth went dry. "Screaming?" The old woman pointed shakily toward me. "It was him," she whispered. "Or someone who looked like him." My chest tightened. The officer studied me closely before continuing. Several tenants reported hearing shouting around 3 a.m. They also reported seeing a man standing in the hallway outside their doors for several hours. I couldn't breathe properly anymore. "What man?" The officer hesitated. "You." My vision blurred slightly. "That's impossible. I was asleep." The old woman interrupted suddenly. No, you weren't, T. Her eyes looked watery with fear. You were scratching at my door all night. My blood turned ice cold. What? She swallowed hard. You kept saying the same thing over and over. I already knew the words before she repeated them. Dawn, T let it wear my face. Silence swallowed the hallway. The officer stared between us uncomfortably while I struggled to stay upright. Then something moved behind the officer's reflection in the hallway mirror near the elevator. A tall figure standing directly behind him. Pale face. Smiling. I looked up instantly, but the hallway behind the officer was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, the figure was closer now. Watching me. The officer noticed my expression. Sir? He asked cautiously. Are you all right? I opened my mouth to answer, but the old woman suddenly screamed. Loud enough to echo through the entire floor. She pointed directly behind me toward my apartment. It's there. She shrieked. The officer spun around immediately, hand reaching for his weapon. I turned too. At first I saw nothing except my dark apartment. Then slowly, from the shadow near my bedroom hallway, a silhouette stepped into view. Human-shaped. Thin. Wrong. And when the light from the doorway finally touched its face, the officer whispered, Jesus Christ, because standing inside my apartment was another version of me staring back at us with a smile far too wide to be human. Then it spoke in my voice. You weren't supposed to tell anyone. Body moved for at least 3 seconds. It felt longer. The officer stood frozen in the hallway, with one hand halfway toward his gun, while the old woman behind him kept making these horrible choking noises like she couldn't breathe properly. And standing inside my apartment was that thing wearing my face. The worst part wasn't that it looked exactly like me. It was how perfectly it copied the tiny details. The slight scar above my eyebrow from when I crashed my bike as a kid. The way my shoulders leaned slightly to one side. Even the nervous twitch in my left eye when I was scared. Except this thing wasn't scared. It looked calm. Happy even. Its smile stretched unnaturally wide while its eyes stayed completely dead. The officer finally stepped forward and shouted, hands where I can see them. The thing tilted its head slowly. Which one of us are you talking to? It asked in my voice. I felt physically sick hearing that. The officer glanced at me for half a second, confused, trying to figure out which version was real. That tiny hesitation was enough. The thing suddenly sprinted toward us. Not like a normal person. Its body jerked violently with movements too fast and sharp, almost like frames skipping in a broken video. The officer yelled and pulled his weapon, but before he could aim, the hallway lights exploded all at once. Glass rained down around us. Darkness swallowed everything except the weak emergency light glowing near the stairwell. The old woman screamed again. Then came the scraping sound. Loud now. Right beside us. I backed away instinctively while the officer shouted commands into the dark. Somewhere near the apartment entrance I heard wet footsteps circling us slowly. The officer aimed blindly. Come out now. Silence. Then my own voice whispered from somewhere behind him. Wrong one. The gunshot nearly destroyed my hearing in the narrow hallway. Flash illuminated everything for a split second. I saw the officer fire directly into empty space, while the thing crouched on the ceiling above him like some giant insect, smiling down at us with my face twisted into something inhuman. Before I could even react, it dropped onto him. They crashed violently against the floor. The officer screamed once. Just once. Then came a sound I'll never forget for the rest of my life. Bones cracking. Wet tearing noises. The old woman grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the stairwell yelling, "Run." We stumbled downstairs in complete darkness while the sounds behind us grew worse. The officer kept screaming for help, but his voice slowly changed into something wrong. Distorted. By the time we reached the next floor down, he was laughing instead. We didn't stop running until we burst outside into the rain. Half the apartment residents were gathered near the entrance because of the gunshot. Everyone started shouting questions at once, but I couldn't answer. I just stared upward toward my apartment window. A silhouette stood there watching me through the glass. My silhouette. Then suddenly every light in the building shut off at the same time. Complete darkness swallowed the entire complex while people around us panicked. Somebody yelled that the power grid blew again. But deep down I knew it wasn't the storm anymore. The old woman beside me gripped my arm tightly. "It followed you here," she whispered. Her face looked gray under the flashing ambulance lights arriving down the street. "What is it?" I asked desperately. She stared at me for a long moment before answering. "You saw the hallway, didn't you?" My stomach dropped instantly. "How do you know about that?" Her eyes filled with something close to terror. "Because my husband saw it too." We sat inside the ambulance afterward while police swarmed the building. The old woman's name was Eleanor. She explained everything in a shaky voice while medics checked her blood pressure nearby. 30 years ago her husband began having nightmares about a red door appearing at the end of a hallway. Eventually he found the same hallway inside an abandoned hospital outside the city. After that, things started changing around him. Missing time. Strange phone calls. People claiming they saw him in places he had never been. Then one night he disappeared completely. 3 days later, Eleanor whispered, "He came home." She looked directly into my eyes. But it wasn't him anymore. A cold numbness spread through my chest. What happened? Tears gathered in her eyes. Our daughter realized first. Her voice cracked hard. She said Daddy smiled wrong. Rain hammered against the ambulance roof, while she explained how the thing wearing her husband slowly replaced pieces of his life. Family photographs changed. Friends remembered conversations that never happened. Even his handwriting became different. It was like reality itself started rewriting around the creature, until nobody could remember the original man anymore. Except Eleanor. "Why you?" I whispered. She looked away immediately. "Because it couldn't copy me properly." Before I could ask what that meant, screaming erupted outside. We both looked toward the apartment building. Residents were running away from the entrance while officers shouted into their radios. Then I saw him. The police officer from upstairs slowly walked out of the building alone. Except something was horribly wrong with his body. His neck bent slightly too far to one side. Blood covered the front of his uniform. He looked directly toward the ambulance and smiled. "Found you," he said in my voice. Eleanor started crying immediately. It's spreading faster this time. The officer began walking toward us unnaturally fast. The medics outside froze in confusion, until his jaw suddenly cracked open much wider than humanly possible. One medic screamed. The creature lunged. Everything became chaos. Eleanor grabbed my wrist and dragged me out the back of the ambulance while people ran in every direction. Sirens echoed through the rain. Somewhere behind us gunshots exploded repeatedly. We ran through alleys for almost 10 minutes, before finally collapsing behind a closed convenience store several blocks away. My lungs burned so badly I thought I would pass out. Eleanor looked even worse. She kept muttering prayers under her breath while clutching an old silver necklace around her neck. "Tell me what this thing is," I demanded. "Please." She hesitated. Then slowly she pulled a photograph from her coat pocket. The image looked ancient and water-damaged. It showed her husband standing beside another man in front of a dark hallway, with a red door at the end. My heart nearly stopped because the second man in the picture was me. Or at least someone who looked exactly like me. Same face. Same eyes. Same scar above the eyebrow. The photograph was dated Yet Gao Bat Gao. My hands shook violently. That's impossible. Eleanor stared at me with tears running down her face. No, she whispered. What's impossible is that you still think this started with you. Thunder cracked overhead. Then my phone buzzed inside my pocket. Unknown number. Against every instinct screaming not to answer, I picked up. Static hissed softly for several seconds before a familiar voice whispered through the speaker. My own voice. Do you remember how you died the first time? The call ended instantly. My entire body went cold. Eleanor looked terrified. What did it say? I couldn't answer because suddenly, for the first time in my life, I remembered something I was never supposed to remember. A dark hallway. A red door. And myself standing on the other side of it 30 years ago, begging something in the darkness to let me out. The memory hit me so violently I collapsed onto the wet pavement. It wasn't like remembering a dream. It felt real. Too real. Cold air in my lungs. The smell of mildew. Blood running down my hands while somebody screamed somewhere far away in the darkness. I saw the hallway exactly as it had appeared every night in my nightmares, except now I understood something horrifying. It wasn't a dream at all. It was a memory buried so deep my mind had spent decades trying to hide it from me. Eleanor knelt beside me in the rain, gripping my shoulders while panic spread across her face. What do you remember? She whispered urgently. My mouth felt numb. I was there before. The words barely came out. When I was a kid. Her expression changed instantly from fear to something worse. Recognition. Oh God, she breathed. Then you read the original. Thunder cracked overhead while fragments of memory kept flooding back uncontrollably. I remembered being 8 years old. I remembered my mother driving through heavy rain after midnight while arguing with someone on the phone. Then headlights. Screaming tires. Glass exploding everywhere. After that came darkness. Endless darkness. But I survived. At least that's what everyone always told me. A miracle. The doctors said my heart stopped for almost 4 minutes before they revived me. 4 minutes. Long enough for something else to find me. My stomach twisted violently as the truth slowly formed inside my head. I died that night, I whispered. Eleanor didn't answer because she didn't need to. Deep down I already knew. The thing behind the red door had found me during those 4 minutes. Somehow it crossed over with me when I came back. Except it never fully escaped. Not until now. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time I didn't answer. But a voicemail appeared immediately anyway. 8 seconds long. My hands shook as I played it. At first there was only static. Then breathing. Wet. Slow. Finally my own voice whispered, "You left me there alone." The message ended with scraping sounds and a child crying softly in the background. My blood turned cold because I recognized the crying instantly. It was me. Eleanor stood up suddenly, staring toward the far end of the alley. We have to move now. I looked up and saw silhouettes gathering near the street entrance. 5 people standing motionless under the rain. Their faces hidden by darkness. Then one stepped forward into the flickering streetlight. Marcus. Except his smile was wrong. My heart nearly shattered seeing him like that. Ethan, he called softly. Come home. Behind him the others slowly stepped into view. The police officer. The old paramedic. 2 apartment residents I recognized from downstairs. All smiling the same unnatural smile. Eleanor grabbed my arm hard. Don, listen to them. Marcus took another step closer. Why are you running? He asked in my voice instead of his own. You know this ends one way. Then all five of them began walking toward us at the exact same pace. We ran immediately. Rain blinded us while footsteps echoed behind us through the empty streets. No matter how fast we moved, the footsteps never got farther away. They stayed perfectly behind us like shadows refusing to separate from our bodies. Eleanor led me toward the abandoned side of the city, where old factories and condemned buildings rotted behind rusted fences. Where are we going? I shouted breathlessly. To finish it, she answered. We eventually stopped outside a massive abandoned hospital swallowed by darkness. My chest tightened instantly because I recognized it from my memories before she even spoke. This is where the hallway is, she said. The hospital looked dead. Broken windows. Rusted doors. Water stains crawling down the concrete walls like veins. But above the entrance someone had scratched words into the metal with something sharp. He never left. My legs almost gave out reading it. Eleanor pulled a flashlight from her coat and led me inside. The second we entered, the smell hit me. Wet carpet. Mold. Rotting wood. Exactly like the nightmare. Every hallway inside the building looked endless under the weak flashlight beam. Paint peeled from the walls in long strips while wheelchairs and broken hospital beds sat abandoned in the darkness like corpses. 30 years ago, Eleanor whispered while we walked, your parents brought you here after the crash. Confusion slammed into me instantly. This place was abandoned. Not back then. She kept moving. There was a fire in the lower wing years earlier. Most of the building shut down after that, but some areas stayed open. My memories sharpened more with every step deeper inside. I remembered doctors. Hallways. Machines beeping. And the red door. Dear God. The red door had been here all along. We finally reached a stairwell descending underground. The temperature dropped immediately. I could see my breath now. Somewhere below us came the faint metallic scraping sound. Slow. Waiting. Eleanor stopped halfway down the stairs and looked at me with tears in her eyes. You need to understand something before we go further. My throat tightened. What? She hesitated. The thing wearing your face the monster. Everything inside me froze. What are you talking about? Her voice trembled. It's you. I stared at her in disbelief while the scraping below us suddenly stopped. No. When you died as a child, she whispered carefully, something inside that hallway copied you. But the real Ethan never came back either. My pulse hammered violently. You lying. I wanted to believe that too, she said. For years. Then she slowly handed me another photograph. This one was newer. It showed me sleeping in my apartment taken from outside my bedroom door only 3 nights earlier. My stomach dropped instantly because I lived alone. Who took this? I whispered. Eleanor looked horrified. You did. Before I could react, memories exploded inside my head all at once. Me standing outside Eleanor's apartment scratching her door. Me smiling at Marcus through a phone screen. Me crouched above the police officer while blood filled my mouth. I staggered backward gasping. No, but the memories kept coming. Because they were real. Every terrifying thing I blamed on the creature had actually been me during the hours I couldn't remember. The nightmares were never warnings. They were reminders. The scraping sound returned beneath us. Closer now. Then a child's voice echoed softly through the darkness below. Ethan? My entire body locked up. I knew that voice. My own voice at 8 years old. Crying. Afraid. Waiting in the dark for someone to save him. Eleanor stepped back slowly up the stairs while tears streamed down her face. The hallway keeps copies, she whispered. But only one version gets to leave. My breathing turned ragged. What does that mean? She looked at me with absolute terror. It means the thing hunting you all this time, her voice cracked hard, was trying to put the real you back. Silence swallowed the stairwell. Then from somewhere deep underground came the sound of the red door slowly creaking open. And for the first time in 30 years, I remembered why I had been so desperate to escape that hallway as a child. Because something inside it had been trying to become me. And judging by the footsteps now climbing the stairs toward us in the dark, it finally had.